Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is Friday, the 7th day of February in the year of our Lord 2025. I will continue today to give you my thoughts on the confirmation hearings of Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as well as my thesis that the hearings revealed a lot more about the U.S. government, and especially about the senators who questioned them, than they did about Tulsi and RFK Jr. Both nominees were passed by the committee and now await a full Senate vote on whether or not they will be able to participate in Donald Trump's efforts to dismantle the shadow government that has run this world for many years. Tulsi was advanced to a Senate vote by the Intelligence Committee on a vote of 9 in favor and 8 opposed, so 8 senators could not bring themselves to vote yes on Lieutenant Colonel Gabbard, who has served her country so faithfully for most of her life. The senators seem very concerned because of what they know will happen if these 2 nominees are confirmed. The deep state of secrecy and shadows will be opened, at least in part, for the people to see what they have been funding for many years. Since Tulsi is nominated for the office of Director of National Intelligence, secrecy is of the most vital concern for the senators. They just can't bear the thought of someone shining a light on the graft and corruption that permeates Washington. We, the people, have no right to know where all the money is going, where it all comes from. I think I understand what this is all about, and that is that the U.S. government, through its various departments, does such horrible things that if we had even a little transparency, then people would start to understand that their government contains a lot of very wicked people who do a lot of very wicked things. Tulsi believes that by revealing those things to the world, there might just be a chance of stopping them and changing direction. For example, should we have a right to know who is assassinating our leaders? If the version of the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and MLK that we have been given are accurate, then what is wrong with opening the files? Obviously, the files contain a lot of damning information about the agencies Tulsi seeks to lead. That's why secrecy is so important to them. Most people can understand that if the files reveal that the CIA orchestrated those murders, then it is important to reveal those things to us so that the guilty can be punished and presidents and senators and civil rights leaders will not be murdered by our own government in the future. If that view is completely false and the government and its agents had nothing to do with the murders, then what is fearful about transparency? It seems obvious to me that there is a valid reason for government officials to fear full release because the official versions are just the best lie they could think of at the moment. Speaking of assassinations, what about the murder of Seth Rich? He was a young man who worked for the Democrat National Committee. He had a key role in the Clinton campaign in 2016. Seth apparently saw things that bothered him about the campaign because, unlike most government bureaucrats, he had a conscience, and that created fear that he would no longer keep his knowledge to himself. I suppose Seth did not agree with the philosophy that the moral cause of the Democrat Party in that particular campaign was so just, so sound, so important, so vital to America that it justified any means to achieve victory. He was walking home one night down a busy street in Washington, D.C., and was shot in the back and left dying on the sidewalk. The FBI investigated the murder and took control of the investigation because he was a federal employee, and their conclusion, officially that is, was that it was just a random street robbery, although his wallet, watch, and cell phone were not taken. Since then, people have been trying to get the FBI files released. Even a judge ordered the FBI to release the files. In response, the FBI appealed the decision and requested that the files remain classified and secret for 66 years. Why? Does that make any sense? Except that it is obvious that Seth was murdered by a government operative, and if revealed, it would embarrass the entire deep state apparatus of Washington, perhaps even send some people to prison. Who did the shooting? More importantly, who ordered the hit on Seth Rich? People concerned about their country want to know who are these people who live in the shadows, people who have no decency, no dignity, and who lust constantly for more and more power, but the deep state says no. They say no to our transparency. Once again, I suppose we are expected to believe that in our democracy we have no need to know who assassinates our leaders. Just accept what the corrupt leaders tell you at face value. Move on, folks. Just move on. If you dispute their version, even if it is illogical, nonsensical, then you are a conspiracy theorist and no longer a serious person. Watching the Tulsi hearings left me with the same sort of feeling. The Senate is supposed to advise and consent and provide oversight for the president's cabinet, but it is hard to believe that is why Tulsi's exam happened. She was able to obtain 9 votes in favor of her in the Intel Committee by essentially stating a lie. It reminded me of the charges against Julian Assange, at which the price of his freedom was lying about what happened. We learned from these hearings that the Senate, i.e. the deep state, is obviously and openly before the whole world devoted to protecting state secrecy above all else, even when it is abusing its power, and that is obvious for anyone to see. She was forced to grovel before the operatives of the national security apparatus if she wanted to be considered for the job for which she has been nominated. Was Edward Snowden a traitor? Yes or no, they wanted her to say. If you say no, then by implication I will not vote for you. So Tulsi, you must lie to get my vote. Tulsi's answer, that he broke the law, Snowden that is. He broke the law and should not have revealed to the American people that its government was illegally, unconstitutionally spying on them. That was not sufficient for the senators. They pressed her time and again to say publicly that Snowden is a traitor. She's bothered by the fact that the American people have no privacy. The government has rendered the Fourth Amendment a dead letter, but the senators are not bothered by that. That doesn't bother them at all. It has always interested me that the Senate doesn't seem concerned at all about the information that Snowden revealed to us, just that he revealed it. The senators might as well have said to her, Tulsi, listen, this is the dark and secret deep state you are dealing with. Whatever belief you had that made you join the Army after 9/11 was just nonsense. You're obviously a woman of honor and decency, and that is simply not welcome in this group. If you are willing to lay your honor aside and start lying to the American people right now so you get numb to lying, then we might consider letting you into our dark and secret club. The reason the club is allowed to remain dark and secret is that no one who is unwilling to say those things and dirty himself with their filth is ever allowed into the club. She was also willing to make a 180-degree shift in position with the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, Section 702, which conducts its spying in secrecy and total darkness. That is not just the opinion of some pie-in-the-sky libertarian types. It's also now the position of the federal courts that such searches must have a warrant. She opposed that law her entire career, but they had to make her submit, and they did. Tulsi knows such searches are illegal and abusive and rob the people of privacy, but she was willing to compromise to get their approval. The people sitting in judgment of Tulsi are not worthy of her, so they have to bring her down into their web of darkness so she will be as filthy as they are. Tulsi was approved by the committee by a vote of 9-8. So we can move on and talk about RFK Jr. for a few minutes. The people sitting in judgment of Bobby Kennedy remind me of people I met while I was a Marine Corps officer more than 50 years ago. The Marines for whom I had responsibility and over whom I had control would come to me sometimes and say something like this, hey, Lieutenant, I want you to meet my hooker. They said that because that was the common language with Marines of the day. That was the vernacular for prostitute. They were called hookers. These women were in a very difficult place, had very difficult lives, which in many ways were made much worse by the war that we young Marines were required to fight in their cities, in their jungles, in their fields. They had only one way to survive, and that was to sell their bodies, but they were far more honest and far more above board than the senators who questioned Bobby Kennedy. The senators aren't open about being prostitutes, and they would undoubtedly deny that status. That's why I respect, even admire the poor women we encountered in war zones around the world, and why I disrespect most members of the U.S. Senate. They are prostitutes and that they represent their Johns for money, but they have the privilege of lying about it. The best example of this phenomenon comes to mind is Senator Elizabeth Warren, a Democrat from Massachusetts. She has a reputation for being a consumer advocate. She makes a point of attacking the financial industry on behalf of her constituents. She was disappointing, even disgraceful at the hearings because she turned out to be nothing at all except a shill for the pharmaceutical industry, which owns her. Yes, that's right, Senator. He who pays the piper calls the tune, and in this case, you are the piper, and Big Pharma calls the tune. She was outraged against Kennedy for what she portrayed as his anti-vaccine position. He repeatedly denied that, said he was not anti-vaccine, he was just pro-safety, further explaining that all his children are vaccinated. Having all your children vaccinated is not necessarily a badge of honor as far as I'm concerned, but it does serve the same purpose as what Tulsi had to go through. Big Pharma vaccines have done incalculable harm to the health of children around the world. Kennedy has proven that fact time and again in his 40 years of litigation against that industry. They insisted that he pledged to stop suing Big Pharma if he happened to be confirmed, but to his credit, he refused to do so. The two senators who showed the most outrage and who gave Kennedy the hardest time while trying to intimidate him into renouncing his honor, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders. Well, folks, it turns out that Senator Warren is not the highest paid senator by Big Pharma. No, she's only the second highest at $821,941 per year. The highest paid senator is Bernie Sanders at $1,417,811 per year. One thing Big Pharma has learned over the years is that to get a good return on investment, I've read calculations from financial people who are supposed to know about these things. They say that campaign contributions return about 76 times the investment, so I guess that means $100 invested in a senator should return about $7,600 if my calculations are accurate. The fact that these senators are shills and prostitutes for an industry that spent several years killing millions around the world, ruining many lives, destroying jobs and economic security, that's not the worst of it. No, folks, the worst of it is the sanctimonious way they purport to sit in judgment of someone whose purpose in life is to stop the damage these people are causing. Tulsi is mild and calm compared to the way Kennedy works these people up into a frenzy. The only one they hate more than Bobby Kennedy is Donald Trump, but that is who the people selected, so they must console themselves by trying to undermine what the people elected him to do. Finally, folks, it takes a brave man and a brave woman to take on such forces, because this is a spiritual war we are fighting. Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard are the man and the woman. They are that woman and that man. They are warriors in a glorious struggle against immense evil forces. At least that's the way I see it. Till next time, folks, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.